So let's talk about the Dutch and, of course, Wilders. Or should we say Geert Wilders or whatever. We'll just call him Gertie. Like I say, I don't really respect the man. He's a far-right populist. Why should I respect him? Gertie, of course, is one of like the OG populists. Wandering about, pretty much, well, like Farage, should we say, knocking around the political scene for quite a while. And of course, anti-Muslim immigration, anti-EU, although, like many other anti-EU parties, quickly dropped the whole let's leave the EU after they saw the disaster that was, of course, Brexit. Even old Gertie blamed Farage for the drop in his country for that exact thing. I wonder why. It's not like everyone looked and saw, actually, that's not a very good idea that the Brits have just done. Maybe we should rethink that stance. And every, of course, anti-EU party has really massively pulled back on that idea, given what happened to the UK. And of course, this is what is ultimately going to happen. As we said, every time when these populist people get elected, they produce simple ideas to what are really complex problems. You cannot just solve the problem of a country by just going, right, okay, no more Muslim immigration. How does that solve problems of the Netherlands? Does that solve the problem economically in the Netherlands? I don't think so. Does that solve any housing issues in the Netherlands? I don't think so either. Does it solve any domestic or other societal issues? I don't think so either. Because, like most populists, they've got to have an evil outside enemy. And of course, to old Gertie, it is, of course, Muslim immigrants. How dare they come to the Netherlands and, put on, our clogs, whatever. But yeah, that's, his whole shtick. It's the same shtick for pretty much every populist out there. How dare X do this? How dare X do that? Look at Poland. Their far-right populist party just lost massively in the recent, well, I say massively. They just lost their recent election. They're now out. And why? They had, what, 8 years in power? And overall, what did they really do? Well, they almost achieved an abortion ban. They openly talked about that and wanting to push that. Instead of continuing to show solidarity with Ukraine, they have now actively tried to say, well, actually, hold on, guys, we're not going to support Ukraine anymore because, well, nationalistic reasons. And that was it. It was the only reason they were not going to support Ukraine anymore was, well, we don't think it's in our national interest anymore to support Ukraine. What? It's in all of Europe's interest to support Ukraine. Not pardon me. Not only just Europe's interest to support Ukraine and make sure that Russia is defeated, but as we talked very recently on Geoscope, we talked about the situation between Guyana and Venezuela. The fact that Venezuela is currently doing a referendum to say, hey, we know the international courts have said no to our claim to, annexing a large part of Guyana, but do you want us to, break international law and, go ahead and annex it anyway? And just to be, on the safe side, we're just going to put quite a significant amount of troops on the border to stop illegal anti-mining operations. Always a factor. I always said when it came to this, other people and other countries would try it. And Venezuela is possibly about to try and do the same thing to, well, Guyana. We've seen What happened with, Azerbaijan and Armenia? Azerbaijan took advantage that, Russia was just not paying attention, because they had, Armenia had security guarantees from Russia. Again, those didn't work out very well at all, did they? So the situation, of course, now in the Netherlands, or the Dutch, for the Dutch, is an interesting one. Of course, he is the quote largest party, but he can't form a government. He doesn't have enough seats to be able to form a government. Someone has to go into coalition with him. And from what we have seen so far, all the parties have always been very traditionally, we ain't going to work with you because you're a populist. We're going to ignore you. It seems like that might be the case again. Or what might happen is they might just go, let's go to another election, which could be the case. It would not shock me if there ends up being another election, because you've currently got, I think, two left parties, um, which have about, I think, 20 seats between them, and then there is a new right centrist party that I think also has roughly about 20 seats. Now, those three parties could get together and form a government. They could absolutely do that, but of course, you're talking about two left-wing parties working with a right centrist party, and this covers something I have always said. If you wanted to beat, if you genuinely want to beat these right wing lunatics, sometimes you have to work with parties that you may necessarily not 100% like. Just being, this right centrist party and the other two left wing parties, if they want to form a government, they're going to have to work together. That means they're going to have to compromise on a lot of policies, but it will be worth it to make sure old Gertie, shall we say, stays on the out, because he's openly going around saying right now on television, I'm going to be prime minister. I am not settling for anything less than prime minister. And I think he's also said that he wants some key ministerial appointments as well, which would also give his party a lot of power. So any other, shall we say, party that might go into coalition with him, they wouldn't really, shall we say, be the power. Um, of course, they might have leverage to be able to topple his government should they wish to. But the idea that any other right wing party might be a moderating effect on old Gertie, well, we've seen this before. This doesn't end up going too well for that particular party that went into sort of coalition. Um, and that's just really the case at the moment. As it lays at the moment, we don't know whether those three parties that I mentioned, the two left wing parties, and of course the new, it's a brand new party, new right centrist party, will say, okay, hey, um, let's work together to make sure this guy doesn't become prime minister. Let's get together and work together on this. And as I've said before, sometimes in politics you have to necessarily work with these parties. It would be in the Netherlands' interest for these parties to get together and work together. And as I've said before, you look at the current state of the Labour Party. The Labour Party is a big tent party of the left. It has to work together with as much of the left as possible, and with a lot of left centrists and even centrists themselves. And we've talked about that issue many, many times on this channel. Um, but that's just the way that politics is. Sometimes you have to do deals with the parties that you don't like. And I think that old Gertie, thinking he's going to become prime minister, thinking that, oh, they can't ignore us now. Well, what if you go back to a general election and a lot of people go, actually, yeah, we're going to make sure he doesn't get in, and of course start voting against him. That might be a big favor for all these for these other three parties. Come the next possible election. Will there be another general election? Will someone go into coalition? Will these three parties align and defeat Gertie's ambitions? Who knows? Who can tell? Like I say, it's just gazing into my crystal ball at that point. But time will indeed tell. And I think they've got, constitutionally, I think they have, I think it's 2 weeks initially. Like, so I'm sure someone will correct me, but I think it's like 2 weeks to like initiate talks. And then I think it's like a month. And if they haven't done that within that time, then it's another election. I think. Don't question me. Like I say, don't quiz me on that. I'm not a constitutional expert on the Netherlands government, but I'm sure someone will tell us down below. But of course, as always, we'll see what happens. But thank you very much, of course, for watching. And of course, as always, click on the like, share, and subscribe button. Leave a comment down below. Helps with all the algorithmical stuff and etc. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.